Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much to our special guest today. Jill and I have Dave Lease from The Skating Lesson. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Good. Well, could you give us a little bit of background information about how long you have been involved in skating? Like, did you start as a skater or start as a fan? Could you tell us about
Okay.
that?
Yeah, I started watching figure skating when I was 5 years old. I had a family friend that came over and they thought that I would like it. And specifically me, which is so funny, but it was during right before the 92 Olympic Games. And I really remember watching it. I also have my VHS tapes from the time of my parents taping up. I had never seen it before, and I was mesmerized by everything about it, the costumes, the music, the athleticism,
The drama.
my parents always really liked pop culture, music. We used to have this VHS tape of like We Are the World. So I liked all the characters and musicians at the time. And I was always dancing around the house. My sister danced growing up, and I used to copy everything that she did. And that same family friend actually took me and my sister ice skating at this local rink near my house when I was 5, and I fell and was so upset at the boards and everything like that. But then eventually I figured it out, and then my dad would always take me and my sister skating every year around Christmas time. And I really wanted to skate. I begged my parents for lessons. It didn't happen. They put me in dance with my sister. And it still was always a passion. So when I was watching skating on TV, this is the 92 Olympics, and I had my tape. And then after Kristi Yamaguchi won and Victor and Petrenko and Paul Wiley, we'd always watch them in all the different competitions anytime they were on TV. I started mimicking jumps on the floor, as I'm sure anyone that has ever wanted to skate or, so I was trying to figure out what a toe loop was by like watching TV because I didn't have lessons. And, eventually figured out how to do it on the ice a little bit. It probably looked abysmal, but it was always a passion. And I always followed it. It just grew and grew and grew over time, growing up in the 90s when skating was so popular.
Yeah.
Went to journalism school, and it was really interesting because I followed skating, like watched every competition through about 2002. And then after those Olympics, after the Paris scandal, and then like the retirements, I remember my own interest kind of waned for the last 2 years. But in college, I started to get back into it and started actually like reading books about skating. And I was introducing a friend to it. And then I wound up starting to take journalism classes and reach out to former skaters on Facebook to do stories about different things, just to try to make myself stand out in class. And I actually interviewed Jenny Kirk about overcoming her eating disorder and her career and different things like that when I was in college. And that's really when I started blogging. The economy crashed right after I graduated college, and I'd done an internship in China that whole summer. And when I came home to apply for jobs, media jobs dried up, the housing market crashed. So I kind of had to pivot. But I started blogging to keep up writing, and it was just something fun to do. And it kind of took on a life of its own. And then I was going to get certified to be a paralegal to kind of find option B or C for my life. And I decided that I was pretty disappointed that there weren't a lot of media jobs and not really happy what my life was going. And I was back in school, and I said, I'm going to be tutoring kids in the afternoons. And I knew that I was going to have like a couple hours. And I said, why don't I try to skate and just really see what would happen? And I skated every day. I started taking lessons, and I've skated pretty consistently. I took some time off for my MBA, but I started actually skating myself.
So that was around 2012 or so, maybe?
That was around 2012. And it's right around the same, about 9 months, 10 months later, Jenny Kirk and I decided to start the skating lesson together.
Really? I thought it was around much longer because in my memory it's been around since like 2005 or something.
No, it hasn't been around. We started December of 2012. I had a blog since about 2008, 2009,
Oh,
before
cool.
that. But yeah, that's how
Ah.
long it
Yeah, it's such an
it seems
integral
a long time. It's
skating.
more than 10 years. So
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
become a part of my life. If I think about how long I've been doing it for, like it's a good solid percentage of my life. Yeah.
Yeah, but also of skaters' lives, because like I said, for me, it's like such an integral part of skating. The skating lesson is just, yeah, just part of the community.
Yeah. That's nice to say. Yeah. I think
Yeah,
for us, yeah, it's been a long time now.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you were one of the first. You guys jumped on to it pretty
Mm.
early on. There weren't like a lot of people talking about it in this informal type of fashion, like in depth and interviewing people, and it made everything more accessible. So
Yes.
you and
Yeah.
Jenny did a great thing, I think,
So
with starting it.
we had a couple of objectives when we started. You know, it had shifted to Ice Network from being on TV. And one of the things about it is that Ice Network provided a lot of information and was great in many ways. Sometimes the technology wasn't so good, especially on the replays of watching things, the audio and the video didn't quite match. But it was really great. I think the one thing is that the coverage became very sanitized because it's
Mm.
US figure skating controlling it. And the other aspect of it is that it was all about points instead of personality at first.
Mm.
And I think one of the things that made skating so captivating was some of the individuality and the personalities, especially in the 90s. And that's something that was really lost over
Uh-huh.
time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I remember as a kid that the professional competitions to me were as interesting as the amateur competitions in
Yes.
certain ways. Watching someone at Ice Wars or at the Riders
Hmm.
Ladies Championship was really as entertaining as watching nationals some years. And I think it's what made us love these skaters and watching them all the time. And I really missed feeling like we knew who some of the skaters were with those personalities. And I was reflecting on this a couple weeks ago. When we started the skating lesson, there were a lot of skaters who had such personalities and showmanship, Ashley Wagner, Adam Rapon, et cetera, et cetera. And maybe they wouldn't actually be the most competitive skaters today
Mm-hmm.
because of how restrictive and how demanding the requirements of the IJS have become. But I think that what we latched onto and what fans really latched onto was the different personalities. Ashley was a
Mm.
little bit spunky. Gracie was very athletic. And when Ashley was starting to perform in shows in Japan, Gracie posted jumps on Instagram of how many triple combinations she could do. And this is when she was still with Alex. And that was one of the first times that a skater had really ever posted videos on Instagram. Videos were just allowed on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I think we caught on to, oh, she's making a statement here. She's letting people know that she's extremely talented and
Right.
she's as good as anyone else. And we just kind of picked up on those things and social media posts and had fun with it. But it was changing how skating was being delivered. And
For
I
sure.
think how post on Instagram has even changed over time
Yeah.
since then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I
Great.
feel like it's necessary almost at this point for a skater or a team to have an Instagram page dedicated to the team, right?
Yes. Yeah. I see it with kids at the rink that are just starting out when they're, I don't know, a juvenile dance team. Does everybody need their own Instagram page? But if you watch them, you watch. And I always joke that I think that the sport would be as interesting if we knew about the parents, because to be involved in figure skating, it takes a special parent personality. And
It does. Yeah.
this the thing is because one of the things I knew you wanted to talk to about how to grow the sport, the skating, it's so expensive, right?
Mm.
So it's going to take a certain parent with a certain level of dedication
Yeah.
and a certain economic factor. I mean, I know that Ashley's entire family skated. So immediately I'm thinking, what did her dad do and how intense was her mother? That's
Yes.
what I think.
You can ask Alina about that. So,
Yeah.
well, let's bring us back now to 2023, 2024. Um, it's the off season at the time of this recording, so we're hoping that this will go live around the time that the competitions are starting, and that would be a great time to know from Mr. Lease himself
I don't know.
what teams are you most looking forward to seeing this season? Who are you most
Okay,
excited about?
you can kind of break it down because I think that there are always different categories of people. There's, the mainstays, the up and comers. So I think you'd have to kind of break this down. I mean, the Grand Prix assignments just came out, and we have confirmation that Chalk and Bates and Gillis and Poirier are both continuing, which was unclear.
Chalk and Bates as well?
Chalk and Bates.
This is news to me.
Yeah. So, they've, again, and this is something that I think is interesting, that no one ever pointedly asked Chalk and Bates whether or not they were continuing up until this moment. And we live in this vague world where Alexa and Brandon in pairs never said that they were retiring, but she's coaching and they are not on the Grand Prix list. So, right, but we didn't get a retirement article. So we do know that Chalk and Bates and Gillis and Poirier both have Grand Prix assignments. I'm really curious about this. I think, like everyone, Gillis and Poirier are a huge sentimental favorite going into this season for a couple of reasons. Piper announced that she had a cancer diagnosis last season. I think normally your heart would automatically go out to her. She's someone who lost her mother to cancer as well. You add on top of it the fact that they were also having the best season of their lives, and they had the free skate of the season that was gathering so much momentum, and then it really stalled in mid-season. And I don't think that they had the same confidence going into the World Championships or the same momentum behind them, and things really shifted. And Chalk and Bates had a very successful outing at Four Continents, and they were kind of coming into the World Championships. And I guess we can talk about the International Academy of Montreal, but ice dance is a subjective sport, and they have teams from so many countries, which allows them to form relationships and everyone know each other. And however you want to say politics or what it is, they have a lot of power in the ice dance world. And Barbara Fusar-Poli, who coaches Guinard and Fabrice, said, you don't just have to be better than Montreal to beat them. You have to be so much better. And I think we did see at the World Championships that Chalk and Bates had a fall. They still won, still got high scores. They got world record scores at the World Team Trophy. Whether or not you think that those are legitimate, I mean, I know that scores change year to year, but I'm interested because the last time we had a team win with a major mistake, to my memory, was 2017 with Virtue and Moyer. Opened things up for Papadakis and Cizeron. I remember Didier Gallagher posting on Facebook how angered he was by those results. And the next year, the French team had gotten the scores. I mean, they had great programs, but they also were getting the scores that he wanted.
The jump that we saw from Gabby and Guillaume is something I think I at least have never seen in ice dance ever, to see a team go from, 17th, 18th to like the top of the podium, and then keeping that and maintaining that for so long. Do you think that's really still doable?
Case. And one of the interesting things about the International Academy of Montreal, they try to keep it clean. So one of the things about Gabby and Guillaume before they went to Montreal, the scuttlebutt or the rumor was that Didier was not happy that they were remaining in the coaching camp of Muriel Zuzui in France, and that another team was chosen for the Sochi Olympics ahead of them, so they were a bit held down. We didn't see them at those Olympics, even though they were a really hot junior team. They were just rising at that point in time. There were many people that felt that they should have been at the Sochi Games. They weren't. And then they moved to Montreal. Their coach, Roman Hockenauer, teamed up and created this spectacular school that really changed figure skating. And I think it really started with that Picasso program that we saw from the Spanish team at the Sochi Games. Then you know,
Yeah, that was
Romain
with
and
Sarah, right? When it was
Sarah.
with Sarah and what's his name? Maddie's husband or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. I just call him Maddie's husband. They got married, right? Didn't they just have the wedding?
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
think you,
Okay.
yes, we just got married, and I think you had a team that was maybe held down and then had the most spectacular program. And I think that alliance, whatever the secret was, both on and off the ice, it worked.
That
And
worked.
the first time I saw them that season, I told Jenny on the show, I said, they're going to win the world championships. And at that point in time, this is interesting. Viewers were so upset with us because
Well,
Caitlin Weaver and Andrew Poge were kind of riding the wave that season. And I said, no, it's gonna flop. It's gonna like flip flop. And it did. And I just thought that Mozart program was so groundbreaking and transformative at the time. And it was just a completely new style. And I just remember watching his knees that season and thinking that I had never seen someone be so soft and ethereal yet powerful on the ice like that. Just thinking that this is like a once in a generation
type.
talent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that that's the other interesting thing when you talk about ice dance this season is that for about 8 years, even longer, like I think like if you go back to Virtue and Moyer against Davis and White, that was really like an epic
Yes, the
rivalry,
battle. Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And that's going back since 2009, 2008, when it was starting to rise.
Yes.
For so long, there were these really dominant teams. And Davis and White and Virtue and Moyer was this spectacular rivalry.
Yes.
But then I think that the rivalry between Virtue and Moyer and Papadakis and Cizeron was even at a higher level.
Yeah.
I think what they achieved, if you look at that 2018 Olympic free dance, was actually so much higher in quality than the Sochi free dance. Like it just took the sport to the next level. And I think right now, this sport is in ice dance is really at a crossroads where I kind of always considered Gillis and Poirier, Chalk and Bates, Hubble and Donahue fighting for that bronze medal in 2022.
Yep.
But I don't know the next dominant team that's going to change figure skating and who that's going to be. And I think that that's what makes it interesting because I think it's really up for grabs.
Yeah. I agree.
I would agree with that. Yeah. My biggest issue with ice dance basically since Gabby and Guillaume had their triumphant ascendance to the top of the world, and then a little bit Tessa and Scott were, they were fighting back and forth. But since then, I feel like there is such a desire from teams to emulate them and to try to create these aesthetic, ethereal programs. And I hate to admit this, but most competitions, all I do is look if Piper and Paul are skating, and I watch them, and that's it.
Really?
Unless Maddie,
it's about ice dance.
because IJS has really gotten me jaded together with the lack of like originality. So sometimes I know there's a team that skates to a certain like, ooh, that sounds like an interesting free. But I do not want to watch 20 different attempts to be the same as Gabby and Guillaume. Like I will watch Gabby and Guillaume, of course, no matter what they do. They could skate to sirens, playing, or a car horn beeping, and I will enjoy it. But other teams, I feel like it's just there's no one else really out there right now that I am super excited about. I loved Olivia Smart with why do I keep forgetting Maddie's name?
the sword fighting program.
Yes, I liked them as well because I mean she has some sass. So I am very excited to see her and Tim. I will be completely honest. People can call me a country hopper. I'm American by birth. I moved to Germany when I was 15, skated with a German partner, represented Germany. But I paid taxes. I lived in Germany. I learned German. I have my bachelor's and master's degree in German now. Like I became part of the country. Having a British girl and a German boy, they're skating for Spain, they announced, right?
Yes. Well, my personal coaches, I work with Kristen Fraser and Igor Lukanen, and she's from California. He's from Russia. They represented Azerbaijan. So this is just ice dance, right? But I wanted to ask you about Tim Deek because I think people have kind of hinted that he's like a really interesting, quirky personality, fiery, and we know that Olivia is fiery, and I think it's either going to work or be really interesting. And I think there's also going to be some struggle, and she was just coming into her own in that 2022 season, so
Well,
I
I
think
love her.
yeah.
My comments with Tim, I've known Tim since he was an itty bitty boy. I was 15 when I first moved to Germany. We skated at the same rink in Dortmund. His father is very involved with German skating. So for a Deke to not
Helpful.
represent Germany, I'm a little bit like, that's like a
Yeah, but think
Gillis
about
not
it.
representing
Yeah,
America.
but isn't that better? This is ice dance, right? Because then they have the Spanish judge and the German judge potentially for them if his father can smooth things over with the German Federation.
I'm going to say a German word, jein, yes and
Jein.
no.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure how the German judges will feel about it, to be honest, because it's not helping Germany by him
Right.
representing Spain. So unless there's some kind of backroom deals.
Maybe they could have the British. This is how you have to think in ice dance. They could have the British judge, the Spanish judge, and the German judge.
Exactly.
Okay?
Exactly.
Okay, no, people are going to call me out on this, but I skated for Germany. Our judges do not help us. Unless that's changed.
Well, that's so funny is because last season, the Azerbaijani teams were competing for which, and it was Marina Zueva was coaching Adrian Carhart, and Scott Moyer had a team, and they had them go to the NRW trophy, I believe, to settle which team was going to go to Worlds, because it was considered the fairest of the competition, where the German judges couldn't be as swayed as at other competitions. So
sounds accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, Marina Zueva brought all of her teams to the Dennis 10 Memorial Trophy last year, and they all got the scores they needed for the World Championships. So that's just how the sport works.
That's funny, because if it was NRW in English trophy, then it likely was one of the technical panel specialists was likely Benji, my old ice dance partner.
We can go call him.
So we can ask him what he thought about it. What did Marina say to you before the competition?
Oh, I have a friend that competed at that competition, and I joked with him. I said, "Were you paying homage to Saint Denis to make sure that you got the scores you needed?" Right? That was. Yes.
No, it is still so sad all these years later, though,
to
think about what happened with Dennis, but may he rest in peace. But no, so we have, to me personally, I'm really excited to see what Olivia and Tim do. Tim is very fiery. Olivia is really fiery. So I feel like that may fill my cup a little bit, where I'm like, ooh, I want to go see it.
I've been watching her on Instagram. She was going out. I think this whole friendship with Caitlin Hawaii, and she was DJing at a competition.
Oh, wow.
And it was very like not skating the way that they were, like, you know, they're just like enjoying their lives as 20 somethings a little bit more openly than you see.
Good.
And then I watch his YouTube vlogs, and I'm not sure what the rules are, because several Montreal teams have vlogs, but to me, they haven't nailed yet the balance of what they can show in skating and not. I'm not sure if that's about the amount of. It's always weird. Ice dancers never want to talk about what they're doing, and it's always secretive. But at a certain point, you're doing twizzles and lifts and this, like it's the creativity. But if you want to build your brand, you actually have to show things and talk about things and get people excited. And I don't know what I know that they're, you know, people could copy transitions or copy lifts, but I always think that the ice dancers and the coaches get a little bit cagier than perhaps they should be going into the season, because it's a discipline that needs interest, intrigue, and they are the discipline that really has the most personality right now, and the most personalities. If you think about it, Chalk and Bates, Gillis and Poirier. We knew Piper when she was skating with Zach Donahue when they were dating, and then they split and they didn't even want to talk, but they were still competing at nationals together. Like, we've been on a journey with the entire Gillis family. We knew her brother, we knew her sister who skated singles, and then she represented Canada. Like, we have been on the journey with the Gillis family. Again, I wanted to know what the father did to support 3 kids.
All of them. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, he was a doctor, right?
Yeah, I don't remember. I think so.
I'm
I
pretty
think
sure because
so.
I
Yeah.
think he even served as the team doctor at several competitions. I'm pretty sure at some of the junior Grand Prix or junior worlds or so. I think he was even there as team doctor when Piper was there. But I could be wrong. I will
Madison
fact check
Chalk. I
that.
remember when she was skating with Greg Zerline, and
Oh
I
yeah.
think Greg wasn't even out yet, and they were skating to Cabaret. And
I
when he
was
was
so surprised when I saw one day he was just like married, and I was like,
he was
Greg?
married. Yes.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they were neck and neck with the Shibutanis,
Oh, the
right?
Shibutanis, yeah. Oh, they were going back in the day. This is my time and your time, 2005. Like,
Like
yeah.
we've known these personalities. I
Yes.
remember when Madison Chalk won the World Junior Championships, skating to Phantom of the Opera, and then the next season, Meryl Davis and Charlie White used Phantom of the Opera, and they were all working with Igor Spielbond, and that was the
The
moment.
Yeah.
thing, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
and
I always think it's funny if people get a bit like, oh, that was my lift, they stole our lift, or that was our music, they stole our music. And it's like, unless you do something completely out of the box that no one's done before, and then like right away they are doing the same thing as you have no right. Like nobody owns Phantom of the Opera, or nobody owns like
No,
this
but
type of like
it's part of the mystery around ice dancing. It's part of the sport, and I love it.
well, well, people were saying because Madison Chuck, she has a Spotify account, and they sent us this last summer, and I remember like I didn't make anything of it, and then this year it was like posted on Twitter that she had a playlist for her Pink Floyd, and what her playlist was last season was David Bowie. They wound up skating to. So yes, they were doing a Pink Floyd, and I referenced it, and I got like a private message like, "Are you sure they're competing? It hasn't been announced." And I said like, "Well, I can't say for sure that they've announced, but this is the evidence,
It's
right?"
like Taylor Swift dropping hints everywhere.
Yes, I love it. Right, keep people engaged, and
Yes.
people said, well, Tessa and Scott did that in 2009. Well, I think they did it at 3 competitions in 2009.
oh
So
yeah, their Pink Floyd was so nice though, because I think one was injured, and so
I
even
can't
she
though
was
they're
remember.
injured.
skate,
She had
yeah,
compartment syndrome in her calves, right? And
can't even
she was
imagine that.
injured. So we never saw that program at full speed, and we haven't seen the Marie France version of
No.
Pink.
But I loved it. I love Messy. I love Messy with like heart. Like that Pink Floyd program I've watched so many times, no matter, even though it was, that's not top tier Tessa and Scott, but I loved that.
Mm.
Not Celine Fabian, the French team. I know that
Yeah.
they were not technically the strongest team that's ever graced the ice. I would watch their programs over and over. And like Yana something and Sergey something, the Russians from back in the day. I watched,
Oh yeah.
thank you, Novitsky, yes. I
Yeah.
watched them over and over, that program,
And she
her with the
skated with
hand
Fedor
and the,
Andreev
Yeah.
for
oh,
one
after, right?
season. Yeah.
Didn't
Yes.
Fedor skate with like a bunch of
Well, he
people
did
though?
pairs with Jenny Kirk one season. They didn't compete, but they were training. Yeah, Fedor's done all the disciplines. And he was an Abercrombie model, and he was the most like
What?
talented skater. Yeah,
Oh wow.
but and then he became a coach. Yeah.
Well, speaking of that country, Russia, Russian ice dancers, do you follow it at all, or did you
Yeah,
just
I
forget about it?
no, I follow it, and I think some people after the Olympics really stopped and they thought they're banned, but Russia didn't get that memo, and they are ready to come back at any moment. They are ready. They are positioning teams. They really had very weak ice dance competitions domestically last season. Sinitsyn Katsalapov had retired. Stepanov and Bukin were taking a season off. They both had children. Right? I think you go and then you look, they've moved all of the teams. I believe Sinitsyn and Katsalapov are just skating in shows professionally, though they haven't officially said this, but a lot of their other teams are training together with Sasha Julin.
Yeah, he's kind of like become the guy, it seems like, from what I don't follow Russian skating too
He
closely,
is
but from what
the
I've
guy,
seen.
but at the same time, I mean, Angelika Krylova has Kaganovskaya and Angela Pol, who everyone kind of has their eye on as the up and coming talent. There's also the situation about if Russia will be able to compete as neutrals at some point, right? They're not on the Grand Prix, but if they're allowed to compete as neutrals, what does it mean with their coaches? And Alexander Zhulin has given a lot of inflammatory quotes about Ukrainians and being at war. And, you know, if someone is a neutral, I believe in the proposal by the ISU, they wouldn't be able to work with someone that is so pro-war. Of course, no one has agreed to these conditions, but Sasha Julin does give all of these inflammatory statements all the time. So yeah, I'm watching it, and I'm as curious as anyone with the state of world affairs. Yeah.
And now the famous Ettore daughter, Diana Davis.
Diana Davis, yeah.
She's representing, I can't remember, Georgia.
Georgia.
Yeah.
But they don't have Grand Prix assignments because they don't have points from the Olympic season. They didn't do a lot of Grand Prix that season to get those points. They will probably have the opportunity, but we'll see them at Nebelhorn or some of the senior Bs. And there are still TBDs in that spot, although there are fewer TBDs in dance than in the other disciplines. So international dance is very competitive, especially in the US. Even I think to have a single skater is considered at the top level. We're less competitive, and I think dance becomes a more viable option when you see people winning. So
yes, for sure.
Yeah. So Diana Davis and her partner, do you see them actually coming up skating for Georgia? We've seen other teams switch countries and have success doing that, others less so. Do you think that they will be somewhere in the top 10 representing Georgia?
I think yes. Well, yeah.
I mean, they have a big politician with them.
They have a huge
her mother.
The Georgian Federation is not as strong, right? Obviously, they don't have the benefit of a Russian judge, perhaps. So it remains to be seen what will happen, how strong they are, as well as their skating. They have been practicing. I think that they've improved since the Olympics. And you were talking about people borrowing elements. You know, they did a show, one performance last season, where they were borrowing the lift that Hubble and Donahue did to start their free dance, the overhead lift where you have the bent elbows. It couldn't be locked out under the rules. And we saw that Diana and Gleb, you know, did an iteration of that. And looking at it, it looked pretty good. They would get decent points for it. The other thing I think is interesting with ice dance is that they've had so many elements that are really kind of crowd appealing elements, the knee slides, the choreographic steps.
No one get me started.
It's gotten away from who needs the best skating skills to dominate. So if you don't have that diagonal step and you don't have the two-step sequences per free dance, it's not much easier for a team like Diana Davis, who isn't considered to have the strongest skating skills, to be at the top. And we saw the Chalk and Bates get world record scores at the World Team Trophy ahead of Papadakis, Cizeron, and Virtue and Moyer. I think most people would tell you that those two teams had much higher level skating skills than Chalk and Bates. But now the rules are such that you don't have to do all of those elements.
Right. The rhythm dance. The rhythm dance doesn't even have like really a proper full-on pattern in it anymore. I feel like it's just been watered down to
theme.
Yeah. And it's going to be the partners alternating the steps, and it's going to count as a choreographic element. But no one knows what that means, right?
I'm out.
I don't know.
The whole thing.
It sounds like a mess to me.
Yes.
It sounds like a mess. All right. And I think that there are some that'll take it super seriously. And how are you going to determine this and be super precise? I want to see it and how it's going to play out as much as anyone.
What do you think about the 80s theme?
I personally like the 80s theme because I'm old enough, but it's funny. I skate every morning with a junior team that's doing Footloose. And I also realized that when there was a novice team that's skating to Chicago, and I thought, oh, I saw this movie in theaters, and realizing they weren't alive yet. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So I think for the average kid, like it would be like if we were in the 90s and they did a 50s theme or a 60s theme. So like I think it's fun for the viewers, and nostalgia is in. They might as well have done a 90s theme because people don't
give us some Britney.
Some Y2K. Yeah.
Yeah, like I think for them,
They would love that. They love the,
Yes. Gen Z, yeah, they're like
Gen
all
Z
over
loves
this.
that.
Yeah.
I think
yeah.
that would be way more suiting to them. Like, because I make
Yes.
comments to my students who are university students, usually like 18 in my day job, like 18 to 28, let's say. And I'll say things like, nobody puts babe in the corner, like, and they'll be like,
No idea.
what? Like, oh my God. Like,
Yeah.
so now you don't have to live something. I mean, I skated, you can ask Nina, not Galina. I skated a mean tango at age 6, like my tango was spot on. I didn't know anything about broken hearts and love and passion and jealousy, but I could feel it inside. So I
Right.
don't think you need to experience it to be able to interpret it.
True.
But at the same time, I feel like it's hard as an ice dance team. You need this story. There needs to be a story behind the free dance. I'm not somebody who thinks pretty song, pretty choreography, good skating skills, done. Like there needs to be a story. And that's part of the reason why I feel like I am not that excited to watch teams these days, is I'm missing the story.
Yeah.
Like give me something, even if I'm interpreting it entirely wrong, I want to get something out of this program. And that can be tricky, I think, with the 80s theme when they're not quite understanding what's going on.
I think for the audience,
it's fun,
easily discernible and fun. The 80s were over the top and fun. So I'm not as bothered by it as sometimes I think there were years where the Latin themes are great. And then there are themes where you only heard the same Bond songs again and again and again. So I'm intrigued by the 80s.
Who's going to do it best, you think?
Well, you asked me that, and I'm really curious because Lila and Louis Gibson have really done well with nostalgia or character programs over the last several years. I have heard that they're doing Sweet Dreams by Annie Lennox, which I think they could do.
That's nice.
Well.
Yeah.
I think they do really well in this theme, but I'm also wondering if maybe this cuts into their advantage a little bit, right? Because
you can't use it for free.
Yeah, and I don't know what their free is, right? But in terms of the rhythm dance, like that was always kind of their thing, right? They have Lady Gaga, they did Madonna, they've done Lion King, they did Kiss. They really have that kind of feel to their skating. Now that everyone is doing it, will they be less special or will they take it one notch further? So
I feel like people are going to expect them to be so good at it because of all their frees in that area that they may be expecting a lot more and have that kind of that disappointment if it's not
living up
mind blowing.
Yeah. I mean, that was really the secret to their success in some ways, right? That character. And Chalk and Bates doing 80s is interesting. Last season, they did a David Bowie program, and I thought it reminded me of their attempt at recreating the magic of Virtue Moyer's Prince program, which I think I would imagine the 80s theme is sort of based on in some respect.
Yes.
Right. And I felt like the David Bowie program never nailed the mark. It was okay. It was good. But it didn't capture the imagination in the same way. So I'm wondering what they can do. I'm also wondering with Hawaiian and Baker, where they're going to fit in ice dance after being off for the second half of the season. And I think it's interesting that Green and Parsons moved to Charlie White, and there was so much criticism of their material last year, but myself, many people, but during the Olympic year, people were arguing whether Green and Parsons deserved to go to the Olympics over Hawaiian and Baker. They switched camps and went for very safe material last season. No one was arguing that they deserved to beat Hawaiian and Baker last year, right? So now I'm wondering what both teams will come up with, how good their programs will be, how well trained they will be, and how close ability.
Yeah. But I feel like that underdog status helps so many people, that if you're like, you think, okay, people aren't expecting me to come out and have great material and do well this season, that is what kind of puts the fire in your belly and you work twice as hard. And I feel like that helps a lot of the time as well. So I feel like that could be an advantage.
Parsons, if we go back, they had a really great Prince program with that choreographic step where he used to look at the camera a couple years ago.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch it.
Watch all of this
during the pre-Olympic season. they had that program that was super effective for them, and they really muted that down with their free dance last season. So the 80s theme might work out for them. He can be a very flamboyant performer, and I'm curious, Charlie White came from the Marina Zueva School of Ice Dance, which I think was much more traditional and safer than we had seen before or since. That era of ice dance is really interesting to me because before it, probably during your era, all the Tarasova teams had those dresses that looked like they went through a shredder, right? It looked like they had like
Go grab one from my closet upstairs if you want to see some shredded dresses.
Right, like the shredder, really ugly dresses, right? But they were supposed to be movement and dramatic, right? And after we have this like, this Montreal style, but in the middle of it, it was like Marina Zueva being like My Fair Lady and American in Paris and Gershwin and this safe, right? And I felt like Charlie as a coach and choreographer so far has been very safe. Jeffrey Chen, Ian Somerville skated with like a t-shirt and the open shirt underneath it, and it was like, okay, we've seen this before. That's supposed to be movement, right? But we haven't seen Charlie really take chances as a person, and he's very outspoken on Twitter, or used to be, about politics, but so far in his
really, I didn't know that.
So far in his choreography, he's been much more like muted, and I think it's so interesting because Tanith was known for being kind of a style icon in her day as a skater, and she's kind of taken more of a backseat to Charlie. And I'm curious with that dynamic plus Greg, like when they will really like find their sweet spot, because I don't think that they have so far.
Does Tanith have young kids? Did they have kids recently?
Yeah.
I feel like when those kids, or they're done having kids, are a little older, Tanith will start to bloom and come out, because Tanith is not somebody you put in a bottle. Like that's
right? Exactly.
So
right? And I'm curious to see that. I also feel like because the School of Montreal has had so many teams from so many countries, the competitiveness within like the US is maybe a little bit less right now. And when we look at these up and coming teams, the US was only 5th at Junior Worlds. And I think Americans are used to, it's so funny, we're used to medaling in dance the way we used to expect a medal in
freestyle back in the day.
Right? If I look at these teams, I don't see the next medal winner between Hawaii and Baker, Green and Parsons. They had to have to prove it, right? And Hawaii and Baker, we don't know how long they're skating, what their health is going to be. But if you look at who's really up and coming that's going to make it to 2026 and be contenders, I'm kind of looking below that, right? With LeJoie,
looking ahead to the future.
The Koreans, Hannah Lim and Yi Kwan, the junior world champions from the Czech Republic.
Right.
For sure.
And which team is going to, and I think that we will start to see a changing of the guard, just because these teams at the top are older, right? And,
well, they skated back in our day. They've been like at it for 20 years, right? I mean, Evan has been around since forever. Yeah.
I mean, if I have been to a competition after party with you, like, hang your skates up, okay? Like, we're old now, okay? Like, our time is done. Lots of respect to you for continuing. That's awesome.
Yes, of course, that.
I mean, I think there's polish with age, right? You have experience, but at the same time, youth and that energy and health is obviously something else. And I'm waiting to see who the next top tier team is. Will the team from the Czech Republic move to Montreal after this season?
Which I don't know if that's a good thing. I feel like they've been on top for so long now, and they obviously have a great system in place. Like, that's, indisputable. But at the same time, I feel like to have that many teams
in one place,
and to have sustained it for this long, like, how long is this system sustainable? Like, is it?
Didn't you go to Tarasova?
Didn't
you go to Tarasova?
I actually went to Sergei Stashev because they were in my hometown. So I mean,
Uh-huh.
I happen to have the
Yeah.
queen of figure
Mhm.
skating in my hometown. If she was not in Simsbury, Connecticut, I would not have been on Tarasovas ice. I would have probably been with like Sasha Kirsanov in Delaware. Like
Delaware,
loved
yeah.
him.
Where would that have
He was
taken you?
amazing. I don't know because I couldn't afford skating in America, so I had to go to Germany
You came to
anyway.
us. Yeah.
Right. Well,
And
you
I'm
haven't
curious.
you still
What
have not answered a question from earlier, Mr. Dave,
oh, what did I didn't
about
answer?
which team you were most excited about seeing this year. And you said there are different categories, so I get that. We spoke about the kind of the developing ones. There were some younger ones you were looking forward to. But is there one team that you're super excited about? Like, or maybe interested in seeing what they do this year?
You know what? 49 Baudry and Sorensen last year were a team that really started to climb, and I didn't expect them to do as well as they did. And they were really strong. I thought they had two strong programs, and I thought that they had a lot of freshness.
Mm.
I'm looking forward to that. From a sentimental point of view, I want to see Hawaii and Baker and Gillis and Poirier. Hannah Lim and Yiquan, I thought, had a breakout moment at the World Team Championships. And I think being Korean, the president of the ISU being Korean, we're starting to see the Korean ladies do well. And I'm really curious to see if skating will pop in Korea again. It
Oh,
seems like
yeah.
they have
Right.
so many ingredients. If
Yes.
they can just like put it together in the right way, because Korea around 2010 and the time of Kim Yuna was huge, and they don't have that singular personality, but Junhwa Cha almost won the world championships. They have a team that has unique charisma and ice dance, and they have many top female skaters.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that country is going to pop. So that's really curious to
The
see if this happens.
prediction. Yeah, cool. Yeah.
At least an area of interest. Maybe that's the future World Training Center where there's going to be some new politicking.
And I like Lila and Lewis because I think that they have been the most social media friendly team. And I think that they have built their own fan base and chosen music that supported it. And they've gotten so many people behind them by being just a little bit more accessible than the average team.
Yeah.
So I feel like we know them, right? I feel like we know Lila and Lewis more than other teams. Yeah.
Like can't remember if I've actually met him or not. I feel like I may have, but I'm getting old. But she's younger, and I don't remember ever meeting her. I think and she came from solo dance, which I think is a really positive thing as well, to show people that solo dance is something real. It's something that can actually prepare you for skating with a partner and get your own skating skills, stronger. So I'm super excited to see them as well. So I'm glad you mentioned them, and to see, because now they're a bit older. How old are they now? Early 20s, maybe?
Young 20s, right? And we also saw that Olivia Smart did solo dance, and she's such a strong female skater.
Oh, did she? I didn't
do
know
solo
that.
dance at some point in time, and I'm obviously really excited to watch her this year. I think with a new team, I'm never cautiously optimistic, but you don't want to get ahead of yourself. But I want to see. I'm excited to see at least her out there and beginning this process to see what will happen with her and Tim. And she also was on Dancing on Ice with Niall Wilson, who had such a strong social media presence, right?
Yeah.
And we start to see that she's doing some more TikToks and some more vlogs. I think some of that influence from being with Niall Wilson. And I think, yes, if they got a Netflix show, Olivia Smart, someone who I would cast in that show.
She would be the star.
One of the stars, right? You would put Lila and Lewis, right? You would put them there. And those would be some real personalities. Caitlin Hawaii, the DJ, right? She has a great story. I would want to watch that on Netflix, right? I'd want to watch Hannah Lim and Yiquan, rising, and a couple of teams, watch them. And I'm curious to see if Olivia Smart engineers this social media, because remember that the International Academy in Montreal is not just a dance school. Interesting is that a couple seasons ago, they also have the agent behind them, because Roman's husband is a sports agent. So they also are very involved in marketing, right? And Marquis, I believe is the name.
It's the full package. Everyone is there. to create stars,
yes,
right? Yeah.
because On Ice Perspectives, who is rising on social media, I believe is represented by Marquis. We see that he, we've seen him work with all skaters, but he does, work very closely with the International Academy in Montreal. So they have that kind of synergy together, right? And I think that that's
perfect
really
combo. Yeah,
a really interesting dynamic to follow. Go ahead.
Okay, we are going to wrap up with one final question, if that's okay with you, Jill, unless you have something else you want.
I'm in the dark, so like...
You are in the dark. So I want to know, who is your all-time favorite ice dance team, Dave?
Okay, this is
a mean question.
Eras in my life, right?
Okay, give us your, like Taylor Swift, give us your arrows, your little Dave, 5-year-old Dave era team, your
the
college
team
era.
So I try to educate myself on old skating, right? So if I go back, like Moiseeva Minenkov, who was a Tarasova team, Torval and Dean, obviously amazing, and I watched them. I always loved Klimova and Ponomarenko's 92 free dance.
Oh, yes.
Stuff that I was watching in real time. Listen, Oksana Grishuk and Evgeny Platov, that situation, and that free dance you talked about the story, and it started as a tribute to Gianni Versace, and then it was the souls of dead figure skaters, and it was that Michael Nyman song, and Tarasova yelling in the mink, and then they had the crosses, and like she was the bad girl changing her name, and Tracy Wilson hated her, but like I was riveted by her, and like the blueberry colored skates and the bleach blonde hair, and she was fighting with Oksana Bayul and copying but like she was also the best one and told us, and riveted, right? Like I will never not be interested. And the Arabian program with Tarasova.
Yeah.
Obviously, like Shailene Bourne was watching her win worlds, but obviously ice dance became even more interesting in the US once Tanith started winning, and then more people started watching it, right? So I think that it was interesting, but maybe we were watching it before. I have to say, throughout so many eras, I would go with Tessa Virtue and Scott Moyer, really, and watch.
Can't go wrong with that answer.
Right? And Papadakis and Cizeron, but I think that Papadakis and Cizeron are almost like post Tessa and Scott, like they built on that. And to me, the ultimate ice dance competition to watch is the 2018 Olympics. Go back and debate whether you thought Moulin Rouge was better than Moonlight Sonata, and then to also watch Hubble and Donahue do their blues program to Beth Hart, and watch them mess up and want them to do well. And but to me, like that is the greatest competition to watch and era.
Absolutely. I think those are your answers. That's your top. We'll have to count.
I like this.
It is, but to me, the moment of we talk about how important it is to have characters.
Yeah.
Do you remember when Tessa Virtue and Scott Moyer were losing to Marilyn Charlie because Tessa couldn't do the twizzles for like 2 years, right? Like it was a mental block, right? But at the Olympics, the twizzles to Moulin Rouge on the moment were their key moment, and it was an iconic moment of ice dance. And I think that they get the nod for.
I agree with this answer. Yeah,
we support this statement.
I do too. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Dave, for your time. Is there anything that you want before we officially wrap up? Is there anything else that you want? Any comment, last note you want to make? No. From all the things?
I think we're good. Yeah, I think we're good. And I don't think I said anything I regret. So
no. Netflix, we need to call David.
Yes. Let's do it.
Get him on the phone. Thank you so much, Dave. And we hope to have you again sometime.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I know.
Bye.
All right. Bye, Dave.
Thanks for listening, and please go to DutchIceDanceDiaries.com to find our YouTube link and all of our other links.